What is going on, everybody? Today we're going to discuss kind of just a fun topic that you can do for a fun side project while you're learning how to, develop things in Python and work with APIs. And one of the kind of fun APIs you can work with is the Meetup API because it's pretty simple to work with. You can pull everything from like group information uh, to event information and things like that. So it's pretty broad what you can get, and you can even like post events too. But for most people, you just want to gather. This here's they've got a lot of group information that they'll give you. And you can pretty much copy a good portion of their information. So it could be interesting or something fun if you want to create like a very simple app to notify you of maybe events or groups that you'd really like. So let's kind of go into it. We're just gonna kind of show a quick way of how you can do it. For this, you're gonna need an API key. I'm just gonna reference it by pulling it in without actually showing it to you. So you're gonna have to just set up your own API key. All right, so let's build a super simple scraper. We're not gonna make anything that complex. I'm going to just build a kind of agnostic scraper. So this will basically um, let you call multiple types of those API calls. So if you saw here, right, like you can get URL events and all these different kind of data points, and so I'm going to kind of create something that you can scrape any of that. And I'm using the term scraper here lightly. We're not going online and scraping things, but it's just kind of using it. I'm just using the term scraper for now. Okay, so we're going to have this API call type variable that we're going to be able to set to anything we want. We're going to basically have a config file, and I'll show it to you here in a second. That's pretty much right here. This meetup config basically file, and when you call certain types of APIs, it'll go and get that endpoint information. And there's a reason behind that beyond just, because you could just obviously fill in the endpoint information manually, but we're going to do it here in the config. And then we're going to set the config file. I'm going to be lazy and just hard code this for now. So forgive me, config file. So basically, we're just going to take up that name, meetup config.json. And what all this has in it is really kind of this API endpoint that we're going to be reaching out to. And then eventually, you can start adding more into it. So, this API endpoint is connected to maybe this insert script. Maybe this isn't the best place to put the insert script. You could put it into a file, but it's just one way to kind of keep everything organized in your brain. It depends on what you prefer. Some people like keeping this kind of stuff in code. Some people like keeping this stuff in a stored procedure. Some people like keeping it in config. It really depends on what you're comfortable with. But doing something where you can kind of just reference basically what type of thing you're trying to do. So in this case, get group or get event, and then have it easily attached to the insert script or the row list is beneficial, because now I can agnostically kind of connect this information without having to do too much thinking, and it's easy to change. All right, so we've got that config file. What we're going to first do is create a function to just get the results. So this function, we're just going to call it get results, because that's really simple. So what this function is going to do is when we get this request in, because we're going to get a request in, we're going to put a request out and get results back. This is going to basically just grab that data. So let's set this up. It's going to have, self. It's going to have params, and actually, I'll show you later on, but like basically you could essentially make the scraper even more agnostic, and it doesn't even have to, it could just be like a general scraper for any API, because pretty much every API is going to have some sort of parameter portion regardless of what you're doing. So this is actually, you could do more than just meetup scraper, but I'm just going to start with meetup scraper and we might build from there. So we're going to make a request, and we're going to need the request library, and I haven't imported that yet, but we're just going to need requests. .get, and we're going to do config underscore data. Oh, come on, data. And in that, I have basically, whatever. And in that, you can basically be referencing this API call type, and then this is just referencing back to here, and then you can reference this API endpoint. And we know it's always going to be API endpoint here. Again, this is kind of where you could make it more agnostic, because this request, right, like it doesn't have to just be meetup. This is currently specifically Meetup, but you could make this more general, and because other than that, you know that you're always going to pass params, those params. Uh, but really, this is all you need. Like that's kind of one of the cool things about Python is you really don't need a lot when it comes down to code. With that pretty much one line, you've pretty much sent out a request to this API and given it the parameters. So yeah, so basically this right here you can think of as the link, and this here is the parameters for that link. So you've set up your request, and then basically you'll end up getting data back, right? So you can say data equals request. We're gonna do JSON, and we're gonna return data. So right there, you've just created a function that basically is going to call data from this Meetup API and pull it back. And so one thing, if you notice, you could kind of make the scraper, just to give you guys an idea, you can make the scraper more agnostic, and then instead of having this hard-coded file, you could make this portion be a little more agnostic, and then whatever you're calling this API type here doesn't have to be hard-coded to Meetup, and then you can use the scraper for multiple things, Eventbrite, Twitter, whatever. But for now, we're just doing Meetup. All right, so now I'm just gonna call it the main function just because it's kind of the main thing that's gonna go on. We're gonna call just basically a function that's going to pull this data and load it. Okay, so we've got that. Again, this is the config file. I was lazy and just put this all in one. The way I think about this is, again, like if you were trying to make this for users, you would definitely want this not in the config file because your user would basically be attached to this API key, right? If you're building some system. All right, now, so we put the cities in here because we want to give you the option, like what if you want to loop through multiple cities? So basically you can kind of do this city, oh, come on, or city, state, and then you can kind of go from in cities. We're going to do per page. We want to get 200 results. Oh, can't spell. Offset, this is just going to be used to basically increment files. And then while this thing has results, equals the per page. So basically until you get 0, you're going to kind of keep doing this thing. So response equals self dot get results. So this will call that function. So this next portion is going to be a little bit long. So I might just speed through this next section. Basically, we've got this huge params, and then also we need this config data. All right, so this will give us the response. And then if you want to be gentle and not get called out by somebody, you can always do time equals sleep 1, which means we need to import time. Hold on. And actually, while we're here, all right. Actually, we're not going to need CSV anymore. Okay, so from here, we're just going to set offset plus equals 1. Then we're going to have data equals blank. Results we got equals response. So the thing with response is it kind of comes with these different keys, and you really just want to call those out. So we want to get the results back. And now we can kind of just export the data basically. Export file. Basically, we're going to create this file that's open. Oh, shoot, open. However you want to call this, data underscore plus. We're going to do the self.api call type, so that way you know what it is. Plus underscore. Then we're going to do the offset, so that way you're not overwriting a file. And then even though this is going to be coming out in JSON, I'm just going to do txt, because then that way you are not risking something going wrong. Because sometimes when you do JSON, if it's not perfectly JSON, it'll complain. So I just always dump it into txt just to be safe. So then we're going to just dump it, right? This JSON function that dumps, export file, and now we can close export file. All right. So we've done the basics. Now we just need to init this thing. Basically, the way you could kind of look at it is just say def underscore init, because we're using a class. You could honestly do this without a class. I just did. Is this not? Oh, there we go. Hold on. Let me make sure this is all offset. Okay. I just did it this way because it makes my brain find it easier. API call type. But you know, it's teach their own. Self.api dash call type. Oh, come on. Call type. So what we want to do is just read that config here. So you just want to say config equals open self.config file. This is hard coded. It's already set up, and just config data equals json.load config. Actually, this is the first time I'm going to be running it this way, so I am a little concerned. So we're going to see if this works. All right, guys. Oh, hold on. One more step. We just need somewhere to call this basically scraper class. So we basically got this meet up scraper. And then, so again, there's two options that we've created. We've got this get group, which will basically just go to, again, this get group endpoint. Or here, get events. All right, guys, back after I've fixed some of the issues that I was running into. So yeah, so I had some mostly spelling issues, like this was date, it should have been data, get results was get result. I clearly can't spell requests. So once I've fixed all those issues, now we can kind of run this very basic script. So yeah, let's check this out. So this is the data folder that everything's going to be dropping into. Okay, now we can pretty much just start opening these, and you'll see kind of what's inside. So this is kind of the JSON. I could actually end up converting this into JSON if I, dang it, hold on. So you see I can actually look at it in JSON. I'm actually not sure why it comes with this square bracket right now. That's actually interesting. But other than that, you pretty much pull out everything. You'll notice that this, especially for the description, it's pretty, the description is pretty intense, and you'll have to parse out a lot of information that you don't need eventually. It also causes a lot of issues, and we'll talk about it when you insert into MySQL, and that'll kind of be the next video. But overall, you see it actually has a lot of interesting information. Like you can figure out, you know, the name of the group, the the name's here. The name, probably who's in charge, the organizer, who that name is, the photo. I mean, honestly, it almost brings me back to the old Facebook days where it's like the amount of information that they give you here is pretty intense. If you want to scrape something, like I think this is pretty cool. And really, I think there's something here where you could kind of mess with this in the Eventbrite API and do some pretty cool things. So yeah, so that's kind of it for this video. I just wanted to kind of show a quick way to build a pretty generalized scraper. So like just to prove that this is kind of generalized, one thing you can kind of do is get event here. And now instead of doing the group data, where did it load? I hope it loaded. Here. So now you've got event data. So this is like even cooler, right? Like if you were trying to figure out events in your area, this might be something that you might find interesting. Um, this again just pulls all of the event data, uh, and you can kind of just pull it and analyze it and do whatever you want with it. Again, right now this is just kind of me showing you the basics, but you can combine this with the groups and figure out maybe some fun stuff. Maybe you can build a third-party system to help people better find groups for themselves. Whatever, it could be kind of fun. So thanks so much for watching. I know this was a long video. It really takes a while to even code some simple things, I think, for me, so I apologize. But hopefully this helps. Hopefully this kind of gives you a walkthrough. Again, there's a lot of ways you could really improve on this functionality here. You could take away this hard coded thing here. Same thing here. You could unhard code this, and the params could be some sort of uh, config set that you preset, or and really a lot of this could just be further developed in such a way that allows you to have any call, not just, again, we specifically called um, Meetup, but everything works or most APIs work a lot alike. So you could really make this into a general API scraper. Thanks again, and hope you have a great night. And please send me questions. The next video is going to kind of be taking that JSON data and loading to MySQL. Honestly, it'll probably be simpler in many ways, because all you're doing is taking data from JSON and passing it to SQL. So thank you so much, and I will get to you guys next time. Bye.